Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
And welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the Labor and Energy Show with J-Doc and Krausey. We thank everybody for tuning in, as we always do. J-Doc, welcome in to you. It's another busy week as we roll through the month of July. We welcome our new listeners and viewers from the western part of the state, from out in western Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, all the way down into the Harrisburg area. And then, of course, all of our listeners who have been with us in the Philadelphia area, the Jersey area, Delaware, Maryland, and all the way down into Washington, D.C. This is the Labor and Energy Show. J-Doc, good show lined up for our viewers and our listeners today. Talk about our two special guests, and then let you and I run through a couple of the topics that you'll cover, and then we'll get underway.
So, Joe, today's show is the epitome of a labor and energy show. Our guests are Dave Callahan, President, Marcellus Shale Coalition, who represents a large portion of the energy sector here in Pennsylvania. And of course, Rob Baer, who's the president of the Pennsylvania State Building Trades. There's so much to talk about. We're going to talk about, we're going to have our labor and energy update from Rob Baer. We're going to talk about setbacks, liquefied natural gas, LNG, and something they call the MVP, the Mountain Valley Pipeline. A lot of these topics might sound foreign to regular folks like me and you, but they have so much to do with our everyday lives. And like you and I always say, Joe, we want to educate the public on what's going on so they understand and can be informed and make the proper decisions.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I do want to remind everyone that if you miss any of the broadcast today, or you want to re-listen to one of the previous episodes of the Labor and Energy Show with J-Doc and Krausey, you can go to Apple or Spotify, just search the Labor and Energy Show and easily download the podcast or the edition or the issue that you would like to see. For example, last week's program, J-Doc, great program and a great listen. I re-listened to the podcast of last week's show with your special guest, and it was a very good program.
Well, Joe, here's the thing. We have the who's who on from not only the East Coast but across the country, and when it comes to labor and energy, and this has a lot to do. You and I do the weekly labor show in the Philadelphia region, but this adds the labor at the energy component to what we're doing, and these are our natural resources. These are what we, when you talk about energy, you talk about how we heat our houses. How we drive our automobiles. Every part of what we do, it affects us. That affects us. Has to do with our energy sector. And there's so many different components. We're ecstatic to have the who's who from around the country on our broadcasts.
Let's get started on this week's edition of the Labor and Energy Show with J-Doc and Krausey. On the other side of our first commercial break, David Callahan, Rob Baer will join J-Doc, and we'll get into today's conversation. This is the Labor and Energy Show with J-Doc and Krausey. Back in a moment.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live,
And the big story on Action News.
plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Labor and Energy Show here on the Jacob Media Network. We've got a fantastic show. We've already introduced our guests, so we're going to dig right into it because we have lots to talk about. Rob Baer, Dave Callahan, welcome to the broadcast. Great to have you on. Going to start off with Rob. Rob, a couple of weeks ago, you were on the program with our launch on the KDKA, and again, shout out to our listeners in the western part of Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia. We talked about a number of things. I'd like to just kind of touch on a few of them. We're going to be talking about setbacks. Okay, we're going to be talking about LNG and something called the MVP. Okay, and so having said that, Rob, if you would, okay, a couple of weeks ago we talked, and I like, we talked about what our labor community is doing, our leadership is doing in Pennsylvania on a lot of our important energy issues. And a lot of people don't know or put two and two together that a big part of our labor sector works heavily in the energy sector. And so having said that, let's talk about a little bit about an update on Reggie. I know you've been working with the governor on solutions. And I think the way you put it, not Reggie, but something else, if you would.
So the governor is very committed to labor, energy, and the environment. I've been fortunate enough to have some very good conversations with him and some of the other people involved on both sides of the issue, including the environmentalists. We're still waiting on the Supreme Court decision and the Commonwealth Court decision. Everybody understands that we all have a vested interest in the environment. That can never be denied. But we also have a vested interest in building Pennsylvania up to be an economic development engine for the East Coast. We have all our natural resources here, which we're blessed. We are the second largest producer of electricity in the country. We're the number one exporter of electricity here in Pennsylvania, in the country. The natural gas is a huge, huge part of our energy sector moving forward. And we have a lot of things in the pipeline to be working on. We are slowly transitioning from coal. Natural gas is way, way cleaner. We all agree on that. Do we need to have some more emission controls in the future? Carbon capture, carbon sequestration. Those are all things we're looking at. But we also all need to be aware that to keep Pennsylvania at the forefront, we have to utilize Dave's members, the Marcellus Shale, and the gas that we have. And we need to start looking at using our energy on a macro level, not just here in Pennsylvania. If we can build that LNG plant in Chester, if we can have our drillers have a new market out in, say, Eastern Europe, and we can help Europe convert their dirty coal to clean natural gas, now all of a sudden our energy policy and our labor policy isn't just shaping Pennsylvania. We're helping cleaning up the world. And it's a long-term plan and a long-term process. But if we actually do it, as I said before, crawl, walk, run, we can chart an energy course and a labor policy, not just for PA, but we could use this as a model all over the country.
And it's interesting, and I'll bring Dave in a second, but what people, they can't know is that natural gas is really the reason the U.S. has reduced greenhouse gas emissions
Hugely.
To the 1990s levels. Dave, would you jump in there?
Yeah, thank you. Natural gas has played a significant role in cutting our CO2 emissions, in particular from the power generation sector. where I think we've dropped emissions by upwards of 44% going back to 2005 or so. And more can be done in the future. Rob did a great job of explaining how, not just how we can continue to make these strides economically and environmentally here in Pennsylvania and Appalachia for your Western listeners and regional listeners, but globally as well. The energy needs a reliable source of clean power, and we've got it under our feet here in Pennsylvania. The Marcellus and Utica underlay roughly 2/3 of the Commonwealth. Not all that's developable, but it's a great resource that will be available for generations. And I'm not suggesting that it's going to be used in the same manner tomorrow as it's used today. Maybe there's opportunities with hydrogen, ammonia. Maybe there's geothermal opportunities for companies who know how to drill wells. It's about the leveraging what we have available to us right now. Great energy resource. And I'm going to say it, great construction trade labor, great union labor that go together hand in hand to support communities, support families, and make improvements to the environment at the same time.
And you said it. I mean, you've both said it many times, but like the conversation with the governor, labor, energy, and the environment, we all have an obvious vested interest. One of the things that Rob said, and we're going to get into the conversation about setbacks, but one of the things Rob talked about a while ago, or on the last show, was capping the abandoned wells. Okay, getting money from the federal government to combat greenhouse gas emissions in that way, which is a huge situation. Okay, touch on that, would you, Rob?
So we have thousands of abandoned wells across Pennsylvania, predominantly, mostly in Western PA. Methane is way worse for the environment than CO2. That can't be denied. And we need to start capping those wells, okay? One of the things that people like to key on is, especially people like to beat up on our drillers. When we're drilling, yes, we have some methane leakage. But I can tell you this, Dave's members have done a fabulous job over the last 8 years of capturing methane emissions at the wellheads. So we're really talking about 8,000 abandoned wells that we know of. There's possibly another 20+ thousand out there. So in conjunction with using clean burning natural gas to lower our CO2 emissions in the short term, when I say short term, I'm talking 10 years. And then we combine that with capping these wells. Okay. Now all of a sudden we are making a huge difference in cleaning up the environment. And it's not like these are incredibly heavy lifts. It's just, do we put the money, the time, and the engineering into doing it and doing it properly. And while we're doing it, we're continuing to build out another industry, So you start capping 8,000 wells. That's a lot of work. That is a lot of work. And as you survey those wells, some of those wells, as Dave said, could be used for geothermal. Now, people think geothermal when they think about a home heating system. But some of these wells, when you get down 15, 18, 2,000 feet, the heat that's in those wells, you're putting glycol in them, you can generate steam from the heat in the earth to turn a turbine. And you can combine wells together if you have a group of them in an area that are that deep. So you can not just help the environment by capping wells, but some of them we can reutilize and continue to create true clean energy for electricity production. And these are things that 10 years ago, we weren't even thinking about. So this industry is advancing daily. You heard Dave say, what we do with natural gas today might not be what we do with it tomorrow. But if we're not going to take a step back and say, we have to take what we have today, we have to use it efficiently, use it effectively, keep generating power, keep Pennsylvania number one, keep people working. And as we move forward, the old saying, we're always reserved the right to modify the plan at any time.
Right.
So as that new technology becomes available and we cap more wells, we capture our methane. And here's the other thing too. We can use that methane. There's another byproduct of that. So you're helping the environment, creating a new industry, creating another source of energy. And at the same time, we're continuing to export our gas. And look, it's no secret. I love natural gas. Okay. I am a gas guy, have been from day one. It's clean. It's efficient. It's abundant. We're just not ever thinking macro yet. You know, I love my drillers, and I tell everybody, I've had this discussion many, many times. Look, anytime there's a fledgling industry, we go back 2007, 2008, and we started fracking. Did we have some issues? Yes, we did. We don't deny it. Did we clean it up? Yes. And Dave will tell you what we did in 2012 was implement some of the toughest regulations in the country here in Pennsylvania on our drillers. We totally redid our drilling standards. We did our environmental standards. We redid our permitting standards. And we together have cleaned up this industry that Pennsylvania's fracking and drilling should be a shining example of what we want in Pennsylvania and the world.
Yeah. I'd like to amplify a couple of things that Rob really said well, and that is in terms of methane emissions from the modern natural gas industry. The industry in this basin, meaning PA, Ohio, West Virginia, has the lowest methane intensity among all other producing basins in the region. Now, what does that mean? That's the amount of methane that's released, that escapes as a percentage of the amount of methane produced. We are the leaders in America, among the leaders, if not the leader in the world as well. One other thing about the wells that Rob's talking about plugging, a lot of those, all of those are legacy issues from hundreds of years ago when there were no regulations on the books. We're proud of the fact that we're operating under some of the most stringent regulations in the entire nation, and we're still leading the pack. We're still operating efficiently. Yep. We're still providing the power and the energy that's needed, both regionally and globally.
Well said. Let's do this, okay? Let's segue into a couple of the other issues we're going to talk about. Let's talk about setbacks, okay? And our listeners, like I said, when I was talking at the beginning when we were introducing the topics with Joe Kraus, these issues may not sound familiar to people, but they certainly are impacting their lives and have the potential to impact their lives on an everyday basis. So our job is to educate people. And there's an issue called setbacks, the distances between wells and, I guess, structures. That is very important. Dave Callahan, would you introduce it, please?
Sure. I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. Yeah, setbacks are legally mandated distance between wells and either natural features or man-made features, whether it's a stream, whether it's a building or anything else. Those setbacks were increased significantly back in 2012 when the laws were updated for the unconventional modern natural gas industry. There's been legislation introduced the past couple of years, including this year, that would take a majority of those setback distances and increase them up to fivefold. So, for example, from a building from 500 feet up to 2,500 feet. For certain buildings, upwards of 5,000 feet. We've done the research that shows that in certain parts of the Commonwealth, in all the producing counties, it will have a devastating impact. For your listeners in Western PA, right now, Washington County, 43% of the surface area is off limits for developing a well and hosting a well pad. Under the increased setbacks, that goes up to 99%. In the northeast part of the state, the leading producing county, Susquehanna, I believe right now it's roughly 30% of surface area is off limits due to current setbacks. That would balloon up to 96% under these proposals. These proposals are nothing more than thinly veiled attempts to ban the industry. If I could just finish with one thing before, apart from discussing, what they are, the proposals that are out there, this was an issue that popped up near the end of the legislative calendar, towards the end of the fiscal year, and it was an opportunity for the natural gas industry, the construction trades, and the royalty owners, the people that actually, your neighbors who actually own the gas, to work together to say, hey, this is a backdoor ban. This shouldn't be done in Pennsylvania. And those three groups, and I'm really proud of the relationship, Rob, you did tremendous work on this, were able to, at least for now, stop the advancement of the legislation. It was a great effort, great partnership, and it shows, if I can keep going, what we can do on even bigger issues like economic development if we can work like that together.
And Rob, before you respond, Dave, when you say wells, just for our listeners, what do you mean by that?
Natural gas wells, the drilling wells, the production. It's the distance between those natural gas wells and other, like I said, natural or man-made features like a building.
And so, having said that, would the current wells that are already in place, would they be grandfathered in?
I couldn't have said it. That was a perfect segue. That's another feature of what's been proposed here. Well, of course, current wells could be continue producing, but those wells are on pads that can host upwards of a dozen or more, in some cases more than, upwards of 24 wells. Those pads would be off limits. So meaning companies that invested the work into building the infrastructure to host a bunch of wells will be limited, shut off, no more.
And I just want to continue on what you said about, we all talked about this on our meetings, okay? And a backdoor way to shut our traditional energy down in all of our projects in Pennsylvania. But what's the purpose of this? What's the motive behind it? Has there been any major safety issues with our current wells? How are things operating as we speak?
Right now, the current setbacks, coupled with what we already described as the most stringent regulations in the country, work hand in glove to protect workers, protect communities, and again, still allow the efficient production, responsible production of this great resource.
Okay, Rob, we got a couple minutes. If you would respond, please.
Well, Dave's 100% correct. Look, Dave's right. When they introduced the legislation, I went up on the Hill, I started talking to people, and I said, explain to me why you want to do this. Give me a valid reason. And I couldn't get one. All right, so what is it? It's a thinly veiled attempt to shut down our natural gas. And some of the people that I sat with, I said, show me an example in the last 8 years of where we have a problem. Give me a driller right now, currently in the industry, that's polluting, that's not following our 2012 regulations. They couldn't. I said, look, why do you want to take the most abundant natural gas in the country that we have here at our feet and shut this down? If you're truly serious about cleaning up the environment, natural gas has to be at the forefront of the conversation. And it has to be at the forefront of the conversation on not just for PA, but where we can send gas to help start cleaning up the environment other places. Now, if we're not going to do that, we're not going to make a difference. If we truly want to make a difference, you take the technology you have today, we know what we can do with it, we agree we're going to enhance that technology, but natural gas has got to be at the forefront of the conversation for electrical generation in the power industry to help cleaning up the environment. And when we have it here and we're not using it, we are doing a disservice to everybody in this Commonwealth and the environment.
Let's do this, guys. We're going to continue this conversation because there's so much more to it. We have a couple other topics that we're going to hit in the next segment. We're going to have more from the Labor and Energy Show when we come back.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live,
And the big story on Action News.
plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show here on the Jacob Media Network. We have Rob Baer, who's the president of Pennsylvania State Building Trades, and Dave Callahan, president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition. Before we segue in our conversation, I want to continue our conversation on the setbacks as we've discussed them. Very interesting, Rob. You know, you couldn't get a good answer on what the motive is behind this. There's so many, and what we've all talked about, and Dave said it, a backdoor way to shut our energy production down. And I think I mentioned that the advancements we've made over the years has been largely due in regards to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, has been largely due to natural gas. And so does it make sense? And so having said that, it impacts us in so many different ways. What is the governor's what is the governor saying about this issue? Have we had conversations, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to speak for the governor. He's a governor, but I know in the conversations I've had with him, he understands the needs of why we have to use our natural gas. He gets the fact that this is a huge economic driver for Pennsylvania. And he's very cognizant of that fact. You know, one of the things he ran on was economic development, workforce development. The building trades is in lockstep with that, doing economic development and workforce development. You know, it's what we want. It's what we expect. And the governor knows that. I think he's really on board with it. I apologize. I think my camera locked up. I'm not sure why. But I will tell you, he's committed to this. And I got to give a big shout out to Dave and his guys at the Marcellus Shale Coalition. One of the things is for the last couple of years, we haven't really been, I guess, saying engaged where we all sit down together. And the other week, I had called Dave. He come in. He sat down with some of our more moderate Dems to discuss some of our issues. And they had never had a chance to sit down with Dave and his people because we have a huge turnover in our legislature. Well, all of a sudden, when you're hearing from labor, you're hearing from the industry, you're hearing from the people doing the work, and you take those hot button talking points out of the equation, and you're actually sitting with people one-on-one, all of a sudden you see more of a sense of, if we used a little bit of common sense, this could be good for everybody, and Dave's done a fabulous job, especially in the spring session, of being engaged with us and engaging the legislature to talk about our issues and say, when somebody says, let's just increase these setbacks, well, let's have this conversation. Why do you think you need them? Why do you want to shut down our drilling? Why do you want to shut down the landowners from getting the revenue? Why do we want to stop our natural gas? And when you are sitting in a room with people and you see labor and you see the industry and then you see some of our more moderates, and all of a sudden people are going, wow, this really, really impacts all of Pennsylvania. And the governor sees that too. Well, now you get this sense that people are understanding why for the last 10, 12 years, we've been pushing so hard to use our natural gas.
Dave, there was some legislation before we segue. Okay, I think it was SB 650 and HB 1465 from the 2021-2022 PA legislative session. Where are we with legislation right now that is impacting this?
Well, that's the setbacks. That's the current legislation is House Bill 170. That was the subject of the discussions that Rob was outlining. And that's something that's still alive out there, even though the committee didn't take up the legislation when it was scheduled to. Doesn't mean that it can't take it up later. We'll just have to continue making the case for, again, the economic and environmental gains that have been realized from responsible development of natural gas here in Pennsylvania, and showing that this is just a backdoor attempt to shut the industry down. I'd like to follow up on something Rob said about the governor and the governor's office. Again, I can't speak for them either, but I would say we're optimistic given what we've heard about his desires to reform the permitting process in Pennsylvania. Permits are slowing down all segments of the economy, not just the natural gas industry. We have to find a way to show the folks who are applying for various environmental and other permits in the state exactly what you need to satisfy those permits, and give the permit applicants a reasonable estimation of how much time it'll take to get those permits across the finish line. Because time is money, projects require predictability. It's something that we're facing in our competitor states. Even though we're in the Appalachian Basin, we've got brothers and sisters doing great work in the production side, transportation side, trade union side in places like Ohio and West Virginia. They're also competitors for capital. So when we see a state like Ohio bring in massive natural gas-fired power generation, and then using the natural gas assets, the electric generation assets powered by natural gas, to lure in Intel with that massive investment for a chip facility or a lithium battery facility, that's how you use the natural gas resources in your state, not just to satisfy today's needs, but about the advanced economy of tomorrow by promoting those jobs as well. That's what we need to be doing in this state. Perhaps permitting reform will get us there, but it speaks to a larger discussion that Rob already raised about how to treat natural gas on a global scale.
And so, obviously, we're going to stay on top of this issue. When it comes to calls to action, we're going to welcome back to the broadcast, Rob. So let's and I don't know if you were privy to that conversation, but
Yep.
We're gonna keep people updated on this incredibly important issue. Let's segue right now to something called LNG, liquefied natural gas. We're talking about an LNG export facility here in Philly. I'd like to set the table for our listeners. Dave, if you would tell our listeners who may not be completely aware, what is LNG?
LNG is liquefied natural gas. That's how you transport natural gas. You liquefy it, put it on special tankers to travel across the water. LNG can be used in other ways as well, but that's the primary way. And so we have the ability to make this natural gas that we ship via pipeline in this country incredibly mobile to reach other parts of the world, other parts who are desperate for a reliable, clean source of natural gas. I mentioned the fact that we have among the lowest methane intensity in the entire world. You look at Europe, who's trying to wean itself off of Russian natural gas. Our gas here, at least in the Appalachian region, is up to 65% cleaner than the natural gas they were getting from Russia. We've seen European countries expedite permitting processes to put together to enhance their ability to import natural gas from America and elsewhere. We need to put that same kind of energy into our export facilities. And we have an opportunity, perhaps in the Philadelphia area, a quicker way, a more direct way to ship natural gas from Appalachia overseas. It makes a lot of sense to develop something there. We know it's something that the building trades are in support of. Great jobs associated with it, not just in the construction phase, but in the operation and maintenance of those facilities. It's just a better outlet for more Appalachian gas.
And we're talking about the benefits of the facility being in the Philly location in a geographical sense. Okay, if we had an LNG export facility now, you talk about the situation in the Ukraine, globally and of course regionally. Talk about the benefits there, Dave. If we had one up and running right now.
Again, for the world, Rob already really stated it well about the environmental benefits. Every corner of this world could benefit from clean American natural gas. not just environmentally, but also from a national security standpoint and having a reliable partner. You know, there's also another factor involved as well. That is what we call energy poverty. Anywhere from 2 to 3 billion people, that's billion with a B, don't have access to energy, or their access to energy is not very secure, or it's not very clean. Because natural gas is transportable in this fashion as liquefied natural gas, we can reach those countries and those people who are literally scrambling to survive. We can give them a leg up, both economically and environmentally.
Rob, if you will.
Oh, Dave's 100% correct. Look, there's people all over this world that are desperate for power. And we want to be the ones to help them. We want to take and give a worldwide market to our drillers to export our gas. And we want to have an impact on the globe. We want to generate clean power. We want to lift people up out of poverty. We want to give them access to being able to have a well pump and have clean water, build sanitary sewer systems. The possibilities are limitless if we would just take the step back and say, here's what we have, here's how we can use it, and here's how we can ship it. And if, we were serious about this and we looked at things on the macro level, and instead of looking at this little microcosm of saying, what can I do right now, but what can I do over 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and then look at the impact on the human race, look at the impact on the environment, look at the impact on the globe. Pennsylvania is positioned to be a driver of that. And I keep singing these praises to every single politician that I talk to, saying, look, for 50 to 80 years, we didn't have a targeted energy policy in this country. We didn't have our pollution controls. We all talk about the 90s when we were running around the country building scrubbers and precipitators and bag houses, and that was great. But then we kind of stopped. Well, we all say we need to learn from our mistakes, and we did. So we started cleaning up the industry. We started putting implementation of harder restrictions on our drillers, and they accepted it. We started producing gas efficiently, cleanly, safely, bringing it out of the ground. We started converting some of our coal-fired plants in this country already to cleaner burning natural gas. Now, are you always going to have CO2 emissions when you burn something? Yes. But you've heard Dave say, look what we did and brought our emission levels down. Imagine if we were doing that around the world.
Well, that's an interesting point, Rob, because it's amazing when you say that. And the reason it matters is we're shutting our, and for the listeners, we're willing to shut ourselves down. And listen to the efficiency that we have in our producers. Okay, how we've made great advancements, how we've reduced greenhouse gas emissions, at a leadership pace compared to the rest of the world. We're willing to shut ourselves down. By the way, the environment just doesn't hang over the U.S. And so at the end of the day, we're willing to shut ourselves down and let other people who are doing it way less efficiently do it, and then import those products, the same ones we shut down. Let's talk about some of the coalitions and the task forces when it comes to the Philadelphia, the LNG export terminal. I think there's the Page Coalition, okay, and then there's the Philadelphia LNG Export Task Force. And I know labor's heavily involved in those. Rob, talk about those committees and why they're so important and what we're up against.
Well, first I'm going to give a shout out to my good friend from the Southeast, Jimmy Snell, from the steam fitters down there, who's done a tremendous job spearheading this effort.
Absolutely.
Look, these committees are so important because you have to get the message to our politicians, federally and state level, of why this is important and what these projects bring to bear, not just for Pennsylvania economy, but for a global economy. And we're always going to have people that are going to be against progress. All right. To build that facility, do we need to extend a couple pipelines? Yes, we do. All right. I have to have them to put the gas into the facility when we build it so we can liquefy it and export it. And we can do them safely. But we have to get out of this mode of we're against all progress. And we have to have our coalition sitting down with our politicians saying, look, when you engage with the trades and you engage with the industry, and we're coming to you with commitments that we can build it safely, we can put our pipelines in safely, we can run this facility safely, and we're going to hire the people from the community to run this facility, and we're going to create a ton of good permanent jobs, and we're going to have a huge tax base now for Pennsylvania because all our drillers are going to be sending their gas down there. They're going to be paying their taxes on it. That facility is going to be paying its taxes. Those workers are going to be paying their taxes. And all of a sudden, building one export facility with our coalitions, we can show that we've not just impacted Chester, Philly, Pennsylvania, but now we've impacted Europe, Eastern and Western. We've created an economic stream for this Commonwealth to continue on. You know, one of the things we always talk about here, and we argue all the time, and I do it, is these impact fees. All right. Well, you read that last year was some of our highest fees ever because of our production. Now, when gas is down and we're not drilling and we're not producing because we don't have this market, what happens? Our fee collection goes down. You know how to make sure that revenue stream's up? Build an LNG facility, give our drillers that market. Then every community in Pennsylvania that gets money from those impact fees is going to see an increase in revenue. Imagine what it would do for your fire, your police, all your departments that you're funding out of this. And all we're doing is taking the gas we have and sending it to people that truly need it. It's a win-win-win. And when these coalitions sit down with our politicians and they show check, 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 check. My assistant here, my partner at the building trades, Mike Forge, likes to say, people hate getting beaten up with facts. Well, when you actually lay the facts out in front of them, it's very hard to deny that this is a win for everyone, you know?
And along those lines for everyone, just a minor point to make, but an important one. We have more than enough gas to meet our own needs here at home and share resources with the world as well. And to Rob's point about an LNG facility, that's just one piece of the puzzle of infrastructure.
Yep.
We need infrastructure in this country, especially on the natural gas side. You know, we saw production last year, 2022, dip ever so slightly, but dip for the first time ever in the history of the Marcellus and Utica shales. And that's primarily due to a lack of infrastructure. You know, there have been countless pipelines proposed to take product north, take product east. In the case of the Mountain Valley Pipeline, MVP, take it south, that have either been caught in regulatory limbo or just canceled out of sheer frustration. We need clear-cut regulatory standards so that we know, the pipeline developers know what's required to get pipeline in the ground to serve markets here, to serve markets up in New England, serve markets in New York State and overseas. It's infrastructure. And we all know from labor and energy cooperation, with infrastructure comes great opportunities for jobs for the trades. The work is done at the highest quality of level, the highest reliable level, and the safest way as well. And so that partnership on infrastructure can take us very far.
Gentlemen, we're down to the nitty gritty. We're not going to get to the topic of the Mountain Valley Pipeline, but along the lines of what we're talking about right now, talking about, you know, and because there's so much there. I want to, you know, we're definitely going to, you know, get back, you know, to this topic, permanent reform and all those things that stand in the way, you know, that are needed, you know, for progress. And so, but the conversation was fantastic. Rob Baer, President, Pennsylvania Building Trades, Dave Callahan, President, Marcellus Shale Coalition. Thank you so much for being our guest. Can't wait to do it again and to educate the people on common sense and energy. It's not a union issue. It shouldn't be a political issue. It's a human issue. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being on the program.
Thanks, J-Doc.
Thank you. Great being with you.
You got it. We'll have more from the Labor and Energy Show in just a minute.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live,
And the big story on Action News.
plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Labor and Energy Show with J-Doc and Krausey. As we wrap things up here on this edition of the Labor and Energy Show, boy, J-Doc, terrific conversation with Dave Callahan and also Rob Baer. I want to encourage our listening audience and the viewers to download the podcast of this broadcast and listen to it. And don't be afraid to replay and listen. Because there were so many individual points that were made with clarity. Really, really good stuff with you today.
Well, you heard the saying from the horse's mouth, right? Okay. You know, at the top of the pyramid stands Rob Baer for Labor and PA, and of course Dave Callahan, you know, for the Marcellus Shale Coalition. And there are so many common sense points. I mean, these guys are incredibly passionate. And like they said at the beginning of the broadcast, labor, energy, and the environment. Okay. They all go hand in hand. We all care about, the environment, and we need to take a common sense approach in, providing energy for our citizens, and at the same time, prioritizing the environment. One of the things about this show, Joe, is that, it shows the commitment there from our leaders at the top to accomplish it. And the fact that, a lot of these backdoor policies, they're set, the setback distances, and, the lack of, the lack of support for pipelines when needed, okay, only to shut it down and have to import the same products from people who are doing it way less efficiently and environmentally efficiently, is the fact that, we have people willing to, fight for the citizens themselves, even though many people don't know what's in their best interest. So definitely an encouraging conversation. Definitely, we're leaders in America. And when it comes to our natural resources, Pennsylvania, that's why this conversation is not just for Pennsylvania, it's for the entire nation. Okay. And so just a great show, Joe.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I always consume the content on this program as a listener, as a viewer. And I often wonder to myself when I'm listening to Rob Baer or listening to Dave Callahan today. And I know Rob had mentioned Jim Snell, listening to Jimmy Snell on our first show that debuted out in Pittsburgh. I always ask myself the question, geez, I wonder why what appears to be so obvious to me and to, I think, a lot of our listeners, what appears to be so obvious seems to not be the case when it comes to either politicians or decision makers that can't seem to get out of their own way on some of this stuff.
Listen, it's the lack of education, okay, understanding the entire, the forensic, taking a forensic approach to understanding, a holistic approach to understanding all facets. So that's why we're here, Joe. I mean, I sure hope that we're filling the void, and that, you know, listen, we care about the environment to the end of the earth, man, which hopefully is trillions and trillions of years away. And we have so many great people here doing what it takes to maintain our energy resources. By the way, Rob, one of the things Rob Baer didn't talk about is the solutions we're coming up with when it comes to the environmental, you know, and working with the environmental sector. Okay. And the fact that we're working together to create renewable jobs and doing all those things together, we can make it happen, Joe.
Good stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of the Labor and Energy Show with J-Doc and Krausey. Again, special thanks to our guest today, Dave Callahan, President Marcellus Shale Coalition, and of course, Rob Baer from the Pennsylvania Building Trades, again, providing some good in-depth detail with J-Doc on this edition of the Labor and Energy Show. On behalf of all of our viewers, on behalf of all of our listeners, and on behalf of all of the politicians that will consume this content, I'm Joe Kraus. See you next time, everybody.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live,
And the big story on Action News.
plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.